All right, thank you. Good morning. First, I want to start off and apologize to y'all about all the late notices on this meeting. We didn't really get this until Friday and got the bill copies this morning. As you know, we're sort of in the last week here before crossover, and things are moving sort of fast. And on top of that, our admin had a baby last week before, and so she's got a new 9-pound girl, and it's Tara. So we're going to start off today, and we're going to hear HB 1111 first. Andy, if you're ready.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I present to you the substitute HB 1111. This is LC 431626S. Should be on your folder, in your folders there. This is both a cleanup bill and a modification to withholdings and reserve powers of the governor. The first part is a cleanup at line 18 at lines 54, 55, and 56. This is removal of language pertaining to the homeowner tax relief grants. That act was effectively deleted or repealed in the fiscal year 2010 Great Recession. So that's the cleanup language there in sections what would be section 451286A and B. There we're changing the time frame for when the governor may reserve appropriated money for the second quarter of the fiscal year. So this would be your October, November, December period, and then hold a public hearing on the justifications for withholding that. There's a 1% reduction that would trigger it in the preceding quarter's fiscal year's actual revenues. The same trigger is also found in the withholding paragraph, which is paragraph B1 at line 40, and then and that would be a withholding of revenue. So there's a reservation of appropriations, or alternatively a withholding of revenues that this bill would address. And then finally, on the last page, with subsections D and E, there would not be the governor would not be able to require reservation of appropriations or withholding allotments of federal funds, and then otherwise would not be able to interfere with the to restrict access or reserve otherwise lawful appropriations. If there are any questions, Mr. Chairman, I will take them.
I think you have one at desk 19. I'm not sure who's sitting at Mike. Let me hold on. Let me see if I can get this thing. Get your mic on. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chair. Several questions. The fiscal year for us goes from, am I correct, June? What is the fiscal year for us?
July 1st through June 30th.
And so in line 27, when it said first 6 months, was that referring to it before this, in the current status, was that the first 6 months of our fiscal year?
Correct.
What is the, when it says second quarter now, what months does that refer to?
That would refer to October, November, and December.
And can you please share why we were switching 6 months to just 3 months?
Well, two reasons. One, we wanted to see that there was actually a trigger. So you had a decrease in revenues over the first quarter. That's the next sentence with the underlying language. And so that would be a triggering of when reserve appropriations could be done. Then the reserve appropriations would be done in that second quarter. And that's the quarter right before we come into session, so that if there is, that allows him to deal with an appropriation issue during while we're out of session. And during the first 2 quarters of the fiscal year, that we'll be in session. We can address that fairly quickly in the first part of session, which would be the first part of the third quarter.
Thank you. May I ask one more question?
Sure.
In the next line, 20, 29, 30, it seems we're changing a calculation. Prior to, it said that it was based on if it is expected to exceed actual revenue, and now we're doing 1% less than average. Why are we making that change?
So we're dealing with this when there's a need to reappropriate or to reserve appropriations when we have a reduction in revenues. which has been our current situation. He's already allowed to reserve revenues for the rainy day fund at the end of the fiscal year. So that can be done anyway. This would deal with a situation where we have a reduction in revenues as we were forecasted to experience this present fiscal year.
But why are we switching it from actual, expected to let's see. Why are we switching, why are we removing lines 30 and,
Because the governor's office sets a revenue estimate.
Okay.
And what we'd rather see is actual numbers, not estimated numbers.
Got it. Thank you, Chair.
No. Thank you for the questions.
Any other questions? Desk 30, I'm not sure who's at 30. Go ahead.
So you're saying that the governor's not going to do a revenue estimate anymore?
This reserve appropriation would not be based upon his or her estimate. It would be based upon an actual decrease in revenues.
Or we're supposed, we have something like the coronavirus.
Yeah, so in that case, or in the
If we knew
case,
it was coming up again, I think didn't the revenue go down this past month?
so the revenues have went back up in February, and I think we're still waiting to see what's going to come in for March. So and right now we're in session, so we can address an appropriation need at this particular moment if we
But what
need it.
about when we're not in session?
That's what the current law addresses, is the first 6 months of the fiscal year. The current law says that during the first 6 months of the fiscal year, if it's below estimated revenues, then that would be the way to reserve money at that particular time. All we're doing here is clarifying that we're going to look at the actual revenues of the first quarter, not estimated revenues. And then if there's a 1% decrease, then the governor can reserve appropriations during the second quarter, which would lead into when we come into session. So we're breaking it down into a quarter-based system and quarter-based revenues, and we're also going to that would effectuate and we're actually putting a number amount that we're looking at relevant to that reduction.
So we don't need an economist to sort of tell us how the revenue's going.
Well, an economist's advice is always good to have, but I think that we need to look at actual revenues.
Okay, I think we got desk 20. Representative Gillum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to help me with understanding on lines 63 and 64, when it's except as expressly provided in this part, the governor shall not interfere with, withhold, require the reservation of, or restrict access to lawful appropriations. That has absolutely no impact on his ability to do a line item veto. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. The veto power is a constitutional power, and we can't pass by statute something that would override that authority. So the governor retains that, but when he's outside of his veto power, while we're not in session as the appropriating body under the Constitution, this would restrict the ability to appropriate while we're not in session.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Seeing no further questions, do I hear a motion? Second. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. Appreciate the questions.
Next up is Representative Perkle with HB 1112. Representative Perkle, if you'll go ahead.
Thank you so much. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you. I bring to you HB 1112, LC 43-1627S. This is actually, it modernizes portions of the Budget Accountability and Planning Act of 1993 and institutes just some good practice and some common sense additions to our code. And I'm going to just walk through it through Section 1
Sort of figure that out.
establishes the State Council of Economic Advisors. It'll be a 5-member board chaired by the governor's chief economist. There'll be 3 members chosen by the
Just
governor.
last
Economists are
month was
those that have experience with state revenues. There'll be 1 appointed by the Speaker, 1 by the Senate. They'll meet quarterly and establish a range of anticipated revenue. The governor sets revenue estimate within the approved ranges. Does not change the way it is now. This practice called consensus forecasting and it is the best practices that's used by 9 of the 10 AAA states that issue debt. Does not take away the governor's ability, his exclusive ability to set the revenue estimate. It just falls within the ranges that are set by the additional eyeballs that are looking at this. So sections 2 through 7 are transparency pieces. This is these next 6 sections are just good policy. It provides for the simultaneous electronic delivery of each budget unit's annual budget requests and the supporting documents to the House and the Senate budget offices. We would get that in addition to OPB, who gets that now. This would include word program changes and changes in allotments, and also the notice of intention to reserve funds, which does happen quite often. The House and Senate Budget Office will review these documents for conformity to the agency work plans and may refer them to Legislative Services Committee. Basically, we just want more information. You can't manage that you don't know. And when you just submit those documents to OPB, just give us a heads up and send the documents to us. Section 8, it repeals a code section. I know we all like to repeal code sections. This was from 1991, the Williams Commission, the first year of Governor Miller's governorship. He had the Williams Commission, and they came up with this code section that we're looking at pulling away that would allow an agency, if they found efficiencies within their department, to take 1/2 of the savings, and they could use it to fund their unfunded or underfunded programs that they would like to in the department. Sounds like a great idea. There's a problem, though, because it provides the unintended consequence that they could produce savings by not executing activities. So it was basically abandoned. Of the 30 years, almost 30 years since this code has been on the books, it's not been used. It's been used 1 time, but that was in the first part of 1991. The recession continued, and there were more budget cuts, and it was never taken effect. The balance of this bill, so in sections 9, adds the Georgia Technology Authority under the definition of state authorities. As you recall, looking through the budget items, Georgia Technology and GETS is included many times in the budget. They do a tremendous job with being that technical liaison between state agencies and the technical sector. They also provide counsel regarding the Georgia Cyber Center in Augusta. And lastly, this bill adds to the code the current practice of redirecting unexpended. This is in section 10. Unexpended bond funds within the agency by a vote of the Georgia State Financing and Investment Commission, but it puts a cap at $2 million. As you recall, when Chairman England went through the budget this time, there was an $11 million a request to redirect funds, and those funds was the bonds were appropriated for Gwinnett County, the Department of Juvenile Justice, and there was an issue with procuring the land, and they wanted to redirect. Basically, we're saying if the amount is over $2 million, you need to come back to the appropriation process and through the legislature in order to redirect any of those funds. This is a great practice that we do. For instance, if public safety looks, they have a bond package, and these bonds are written fairly broadly. and we need a new helicopter for public safety. And they actually find one that's more efficient and more effective for their need, and it's maybe $1 million cheaper. They can purchase the better machine and then redirect those funds, since this is under $2 million, redirect the funds to a mission that would support that bond package. So maintenance or engine for that, supporting. So that's basically, that's based on my bill, and I will accept any questions that you might have now.
Yeah,
It's a pretty simple
Representative
bill. It
Gamble-
took a while to get
Gamble.
through.
I'm sorry.
It's a pretty simple
Representative
bill. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Just had a question about line 31 there on page 2. And I know this might seem petty, but here it says that each member of the council shall either be an economist or a person who has background and expertise in state revenues in the state government. That last part is the only thing that I guess I would ask you. When we say that, who do we mean? I mean, obviously, we know that Chairman England is an expert on the budget, and
Well,
we
he
have
is an expert, and he is not.
budget directors, but I guess that just seems a little wide open how that's worded there.
Well, that way that, and it's true that we love, as an economist, I love economists. But if you have broad experience and expertise, I heard that. If you have broad experience and expertise in the budgeting process, even without an economics degree, a PhD in economics.
So we're thinking like an agency budget director or someone that's maybe
Yes.
on the appropriations committee that has budget experience.
Vast experience, yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Okay, and then the last question I had, Mr. Chairman, if I can ask one more, back at the back of the bill, on line 203, the commission, make sure that I understand which, it's not the council we're talking about at the beginning of the bill. This is a separate commission that's involved with reviewing the budget differences on an annual basis, right?
That is correct. So this commission is the Georgia State Financing and Investment Commission.
Okay, all right,
Yes.
thank you.
Representative Gilligan, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Perkle. I have a question. Do you have a copy by any chance of the original House Bill 1112, LC 43-1603?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so in that Section 1, that was encouraging state agencies to identify and implement cost-saving measures. Is that language captured anywhere in the latest LC 43-1627S?
I mean, yes, it's pervasive through sections 2 through 7 regarding efficiency of the department. Yes.
Okay. So even though this exact language is not in this bill, you're
That's-
saying that
that's correct.
the language here would in fact achieve that goal,
Yes.
to achieve efficiencies?
Yes.
I may have further questions, but I don't at this moment. I have to apologize. I did not have this legislation in front of me before now, and I'm trying to digest very quickly.
Well, I apologize to you on that, but we did not have it ourselves until this morning. So,
And I don't want to disparage anybody. I just have a very difficult time reading something, digesting it, and understanding it in
You
the
know,
10 minutes
it's-
while Representative Perkle was speaking.
happens this time every year, doesn't it? Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Representative Walensky.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, this is my first term, so I'm still learning. And prior to 2018, who for the governor did this work that this commission would be doing?
So this is the state economist. Yeah. So right now it's Dr. Dorfman. It's our chief economist for the state that the governor appoints. The governor selects our economist that sets the revenue estimate. And one of the reasons this is so important, I mean, one, it's good government. So of the 10 states that are AAA rated states that issue debt, 9 of those have a consensus forecast, which is what this would do. The Volcker Enterprise Alliance has an annual state budget report card, ranks Georgia for best practices, ranks Georgia as an A or B in all of them, except for revenue forecasting. And the 2019 report states Georgia's 3-year average of C and budget forecasting reflects its reluctance to use consensus forecasting. Instead, the governor appoints a state economist to help prepare revenue forecasts. So this basically puts more eyeballs on it.
When you say consensus forecast, do you mean by adding a commission, there's a consensus among the commission, or what makes this a consensus forecast?
Well, so it's more than one person. So a consensus is where several people, well, you're a lawyer, you know what consensus is, but there's several people that will come together, and they'll come up with a range of, okay, this is what we anticipate the range of our revenue estimate to be. The governor then will choose. Right now, he just uses the state economist to choose what the revenue is going to be. This provides a range, and he chooses within that range.
Can our current state economist do multiple forecasts to have a consensus forecast on his own, or we need this commission to do that?
Well, so the request in this bill is that we use this commission as to have more eyeballs on the current state of the economy and come up with a range of a forecast for revenue for the great state of Georgia. And it will be chaired by the chief economist. So the governor will have 3 people on this commission. The lieutenant governor, the president of the Senate would have 1, and the speaker would have 1.
Yeah.
So.
I've, my district is actually, half and half. So I hear a lot of time, good government, small government. I'm just trying to understand. Can the current economist right now, without this commission, do multiple consensus?
Yes, he can do an informal. Yes, he could.
Okay.
Yes, he
and
could.
then on line 211, the term purpose, how is that defined in terms of our Georgia code, or in terms of this code section, in terms of where funds can be redirected? How is purpose defined?
And any one purpose, and that's the reason is so it's not in code now. And so as a general rule, agencies request all the time a redirection of funds. They come in at less than what the bond package was. This is basically stating if it's more than $2 million, it needs to come back before an appropriation cycle. It makes government work efficiently that we can redirect funds, but also it's like the $11 million it should actually come back through the appropriation process.
Yeah, thank you. I hear that. So in lines 202 through 205, it says that anything under $2 million may be redirected to another purpose. And then section 2 says anything over $2 million shall not be redirected. So my thought is, what happens if we have 10 $1.9 million that's being redirected, and under 211 it says any one purpose shall not receive more than $2 million?
That's correct. For each bond purpose, each bond package purpose. So it's like Department of Public Safety might have an $8 million bond for a new helicopter. And the example that I gave, if it came in at $7 million, then they can use the additional, redirect those funds to support the mission of that bond, and not, so each bond stands.
Would it be helpful to define purpose in line 211 more specific to bond purpose or to a specific bond? Just wondering. That's my last question.
I will, I think it's pretty explanatory as it is. So,
thank you, Chair.
I'm good.
Representative Caldwell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative, for bringing the bill. A couple of quick questions for you. So I think you mentioned 9 out of 10 states with AAA bond rating are currently doing consensus forecasts. So we're the sole exception then.
That's
on
correct.
That list. Okay, so help me. Shame on me. I don't have my state constitution sitting in front of me, and I used to take that to committee meetings. So maybe I'm finally part of the establishment. I believe that the governor's setting revenue forecast is a constitutional provision, right?
That's correct.
So are we constitutionally empowered to I think that setting the range is how we're kind of side-skirting that constitutional provision in this, right?
Well, and so we don't touch the governor's ability to set the revenue estimate. So that's his entire purview. This will just allow more eyeballs on it to find a consensus. But we've got a $28 billion budget, and and the governor, he and his economists have done a great job. But this just adds more input into where this range is, and actually provides us data so that we can, because they'll meet quarterly, so we would have a member on this commission, and we could be looking at consistently the revenue estimates and how the revenues come in.
Okay. No, and again, I love that we're borrowing from best practices here. I think that's wise. Do we know what the governor and the state economist's temperature is on this? Is this something that, have we discussed this with them, I assume?
I have not.
Okay.
I have not.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I'm sure I will have a conversation
I'm
with him.
confident. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, do I hear a motion? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Congratulations, Mr. Chairman, you got a bill. Thank you all for coming this morning, especially on this short notice, and we are adjourned.